Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Stephanie Dray, who is a historical women's fiction author and fantasy also author. And for readers unfamiliar with your work, Stephanie, how would you describe what it is that you write?
I write primarily historical biographical fiction about women who have been underappreciated in history. And most recently, I've written about mainly founding mothers of the United States, including Patsy Jefferson, who is Thomas Jefferson's daughter, and Eliza Hamilton, who is Alexander Hamilton's wife. And so I know it might seem a little strange to readers that I've moved on to Frances Perkins, who was the Secretary of Labor under FDR. But I think of her as a founding mother of the 20th century. So it all fits in for me.
Okay, so these are all people who actually existed,
Yes.
and you put a fictional swing on things.
Yeah. So I know that a lot of people love biographies, and I do too. But I feel like historical fiction gives you the ability to go where historians rightly fear to tread. For example, with Frances Perkins in becoming Madam Secretary, she was a very private person. And so there's a lot about her personal life that historians would hesitate to speculate about. But as the job of a novelist, you are supposed to speculate. You're supposed to put together the clues like a detective and come up with a plausible theory about someone's life. And because of that, you're able to bring out emotions in the reader and hopefully encourage them to learn more about the historical subject. So I just love historical fiction. I think it's an amazing art form, and I think readers really appreciate it too.
Okay, so what do you think? What do you think draws readers to these kinds of books?
I think that sometimes straight biographies are a little daunting. They might seem a bit academic or dry. And historical fiction is, it's a novel. So you have to shape it into a story with, rising tension and plot points and twists and hopefully an uplifting ending. And I think people are looking for that, especially in times when we're feeling like the world might be a little dark.
Absolutely. So what was the inspiration for your latest book? And your latest book is Becoming Madam Secretary.
Yes. So I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about my family history. Unlike Frances Perkins, I have no revolutionary ancestors. All of my people came to the United States in the early 1900s. They were fleeing poverty and persecution in Europe. And they found great opportunity in the United States, but there was also a lot of struggle too. For example, all four of my grandparents lived through the Great Depression, and they told a lot of stories about that time. Some of them were a little, funny about them hunting for mushrooms in the woods, or frogs, and some of them were quite tragic, including a story that my grandfather told that when he was about 10, he had an older brother who was a teenager who decided to try to steal some coal from a passing train so that he could keep the family warm during a very cold Rochesterian winter during the Great Depression. And he was killed during that attempt. And my grandfather never really got over that. In fact, he named my father after that lost brother. Um, the family was in dire straits during the Great Depression. And then FDR came into office. My grandfather, when he was old enough, he joined the Civilian Conservation Corps. And he was so proud of being able to, send $1 a day back home to help the family. And he was a city boy. He was raised on Warehouse Street in Rochester, New York, but he learned all of these sort of lumberjack skills from the CCC. And I even remember as a kid, he could put a dime down on the forest floor and he could hit it with that tree. So he was really proud of that. And all of my grandparents thought of Roosevelt as the president who sort of saved the country and certainly saved our family. So it was natural for me to be attracted to that time period. But I hadn't really realized until writing this book that even though FDR gets the lion's share of the credit for the New Deal, Frances Perkins was the architect of the New Deal. She was the woman behind the great man. And I just, when I realized who, what she had accomplished, I wanted to tell her story because I think that she was the greatest woman in American history. And I know that's a huge claim, but I will die on this hill. And I feel like when people read my book, Becoming Madam Secretary, they're going to climb up on that hill with me and mount the cannons too, because her work shaped about 100 years of American history. And I can't think of any other woman who has done that, much less really many other men who have done that. So I really think there should be a street or a park named after her in every city in America.
Wow, that is an incredible claim, but it she was an incredible woman.
Yes, she was. And a Worcester girl.
She was a Worcester girl,
She
did
was
you say?
from Worcester, Massachusetts.
I never realized that.
Yes, you claim to fame, claim her proudly.
Oh, wow. We really need to do something about that.
Yes.
Oh, that's incredible. Woo. So, so what were the steps that you took to bring it from initial inspiration to a final book?
Well, I had originally feared that Frances might not be a great heroine for a novel because most of us know her from the sort of older pictures that we have when she was Secretary of Labor. She's sort of stuffy. She looks dowdy, stern, matronly kind of lady. And I sort of took that at face value. But I was doing some research with my friend and sometimes co-author Laura Camoy on the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire when we stumbled over a youthful picture of Frances Perkins. And she was super stylish. She had like a plumed feather hat and a beautiful coat and a cute little purse. And I'm embarrassed to say it hadn't occurred to me that she'd ever been young. And and I thought, oh, who is this dashing and daring young lady? And then that's when I realized that her story was much more complex, that the image that we have of her as sort of an older, dowdy woman is the one that she wanted us to have. She wanted us to think of her as being very serious. But in fact, she was fun and funny, and she was friends with extraordinary people, including Sinclair Lewis, who was one of her best friends, literary bad boy, a real cut up. And, if you think this is one of her best friends, that tells you a little something about her personality. She was maybe not the stern woman that she pretended. So I knew that I had to make sure that my research delved into the personal side of Frances, the side that she didn't really want us to see. And so I certainly read all the biographies that I could about her. And I read her book that she wrote about President Roosevelt, which is called The Roosevelt That I Knew. And then I read the transcript of her oral history. She left behind about 5,000 pages worth of transcribed oral history. And in it, you really start to get a sense of her voice and her personality. I loved that. And this is the first heroine I've had a chance to write who I could actually see films of her, how she looked and how she spoke. There are still extant recordings of her speeches. But the cherry on the sundae in terms of research was really her personal papers at Columbia University. And that's where I found some of the love letters and love poems that she wrote, very, very personal things that she probably wouldn't have wanted me to display to the world. But I think it's important that we know the woman behind the policies, such as Social Security, which was her baby.
Interesting. Wow. So you actually kind of answered my next
Oh,
question, but it's what kind of research went into writing this book? So you've already
yeah.
answered most of it. But what was your favorite research story in any of your books? And in any of your books?
Okay. Well, for any of my books, the my favorite research story is also my least favorite research story because it involved a lot of extra work for me. And that was surrounding the women of Chateau Lafayette, which is the
Mhm.
book that I wrote just before this one. And one of the heroines in that novel is Beatrice Chandler. And she was a socialite in the early 1900s. She was an activist during World War One and a philanthropist. And I thought I knew her story. I knew that she was having marital problems before World War One, and that she went overseas and did all of this incredible war relief work, including buying the chateau that the Marquis de Lafayette grew up in and converting it into a place where she could care for displaced children from the war. And but her marriage seems to have been repaired, or at least become more amicable after the war. So I thought, all right, I know this story. I can write about how the war transformed their relationship. Great. So I wrote that. Then I was going through her papers at the New York Historical Society, and there are 26 boxes of unsorted papers, and I couldn't even get through them all. But one of the things that I found was a packet of love letters, and they were not from her husband. They were from a French officer at the front. And once I decoded them, because they were in code, the two of them wanted to hide the information from the censors. I realized that I had uncovered a secret love affair, a 100-year-old secret love affair. And also that put me in the position of having to tell the family, not fun. Hey, your grandma was having an affair with a French officer. But okay, I thought, all right, I know this story. Then she goes off to war. She meets this dashing French officer. Doesn't work out. Tragic love story. She's forced to go back to her husband. Okay, I can write that story. So I did. And then just before I was turning the book in, I got a call from Beatrice's grandson, and he said, I've discovered something through some of the papers that you found at the New York Historical Society. I've learned that my grandmother was lying about her identity her entire life. She was not a wealthy woman from means. She actually was the child, she was an illegitimate child of Irish immigrants who was living on her own wits in the streets at age 11, and rose to marry my grandfather, who was a millionaire. And I knew that this changed everything. I had to reconceive everything about who she was and what she was doing in France. But it was also very moving because I realized that this was a woman who never forgot where she came from. And once she made it and she was a wife of a millionaire, she still helped all of those displaced children from the war who were just like her when she was a little girl. And that really moved me. And I thought this was a truth that she couldn't have told in her own time, but I get to tell it in a novel. And that is an extraordinarily wonderful and rewarding thing. So that is my favorite of all time.
Wow, that is incredible. I I can imagine. And her grandson must have been just totally bowled over.
He was, and I remember him worrying that people would judge her harshly for having lied about who she was. And I told him, and this is something that I truly believe, I said, Bill, readers are going to think she's a more extraordinary heroine than anyone ever knew. That she went through all of this and still managed to do these incredible things with her life. So it was really my honor to write about her and the women of Chateau Lafayette. And that's about three heroines in three different wars, all inspired by the same legacy. So, and a secret, a castle with secret tunnels in France. So that was a wonderful book to write.
Did you get to go to France?
Oh, I did. And it's great when you get to go to France as a writer because then it's tax deductible.
Wonderful. So, what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out becoming Madam Secretary?
I think part of the challenge was my knowing that Frances would have not liked my exposing a lot of her private life. Um, though I did get a wonderful call from her grandson, not a call, a message from her grandson saying that it's true that his grandmother would probably take a dim view of what I was doing, but that she would understand the necessity of it for posterity and for the preservation of her legacy. And that meant a lot to me because I did know that I was walking on very sacred ground in a way. This is a woman whose legacy is still relevant and being debated today. We're still having arguments um, about Social Security. And sadly, the thing that was most shocking to me while I was writing about her is that we're still having arguments about child labor, which is something that she eradicated in the United States and thought, that was settled. And so that was a challenge to make sure that I portrayed her honestly and also made sure that her legacy and the importance of it is communicated effectively to readers and that they come away with it both inspired and also willing to fight those battles again.
So, was there any, well, since it's really with real people, it's hard to ask this question, but what was there one character or one person that you really loved or hated the most in your book?
Yeah, no, it's even though they're real people, it's you feel different ways about them. I really loved Frances Perkins' whiz kid assistant solicitor of labor, Charlie Wyzanski, who was brilliant and went on to be one of America's great civil libertarian judges. I also had a love-hate relationship with FDR because one of the most fun things in this book was to realize that even though Frances Perkins and Franklin Delano Roosevelt became great friends and forged a partnership that changed the country and changed the world, they did not like each other when they first met. She thought he was a dilettante and he had no business in government. She gloried in his nickname, which was Feather Duster Roosevelt. So, so I got to, show him when he was young and sort of callow and very annoying, and then watch the man grow over the process of the book and over his lifetime. And that was so much fun. It was sort of like an enemies to lovers romance, but without the romance.
Oh, wow, that's great. So, what can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, I am next working with Laura Camoy again. We are getting the band back together for a new project on a little known founding mother named Abigail Adams.
Oh, never heard of her.
Yeah, we're having a great time writing about her because she's very saucy and a great American woman.
Wonderful. That should be an interesting book. Yeah.
So you see, I love those Massachusetts girls.
Yeah. Yeah. We had some pretty good people out there. We
Yeah,
still
you
do.
have. You
We
have.
still do.
Yeah.
Okay, now I have some questions about you, about being a writer.
Okay.
What is your favorite part about being a writer? Oh, the whole writing and publishing process.
Probably that I get to work at home in pajama pants.
Okay. Yeah, you're not the only one that said that, actually.
I mean, and a less glib answer is that I really do love bringing these women to life and educating people on important things that we have sort of forgotten, um, like the legacy of Frances Perkins. And so that is, very rewarding to me. And being able to make a unique contribution to the historical record, because historical fiction writers ask things that historians sometimes don't, for good reasons, but it allows me to feel like I'm doing my part.
Okay. So what do you consider the most challenging part of the writing process, and how do you overcome that?
I find drafting to be quite difficult. A blank page is terrifying to me. Um, and so I just try to slog through it as fast as I can. I love the editing process, though. That's where I think I really shine.
Ah, okay. So what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Oh goodness, I really loved when we were first marketing America's First Daughter, which was about Patsy Jefferson, because we got to go to Monticello and sort of peek around the house and go through all the things. And I always love visiting the sites of a book that I'm writing about. And so, I talked earlier about, did I get to go to France? Oh my God, I got to go to the castle at Chavignac, Lafayette's home. And what an adventure that was. We had so much fun. And I lose my mind in historical sites. I get so overwhelmed and verklempt. I get choked up, like, oh my God, I'm walking in the footsteps of greatness. And so I was lucky that, I had my husband there to take the pictures because my hands were shaking the whole time.
As an author, were you able to get into sites that most people um, aren't?
Um, I have been given very little deference as a writer.
Uh,
I don't think I've ever had any, gotten to see anything special that other people haven't seen, but I am very persistent and I'm like a dog with a bone, so I keep bugging them usually until they show me things that maybe other people haven't seen or haven't thought to ask about.
okay. So what is the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
I think it's that both writing and reading are exercises in empathy. In order for me to write about a character, especially a real historical character, I have to put myself in their shoes and try to think like they do and try not to judge them from the inside, at least not until after I finish writing the draft. Um, and when I'm reading, and I try to read a lot now, I have a broader perspective on and sympathy for people in history who have been faced with catastrophic choices. Um, and I've learned how complicated things are, but I've also learned, and this is the biggest takeaway from all of my books, I think, is that we often think that in history, that progress is linear. And, everything just keeps getting better and more progressive. People's rights get better and the world improves. That doesn't happen by itself, and it isn't linear. There are setbacks, there are backlashes against progress, and in every generation, we have to fight. We can't think to ourselves, oh, our grandparents settled, the fight against fascism in Europe. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Nope. Uh, it's a fight that never ends, and we have to be prepared to fight it every generation. And that's both frustrating, but also kind of beautiful because it means that we're connected to all the people who have fought for justice in the past.
So what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
Oh, be persistent. Uh, I think, and here's another one too. I used to ask, I get writer's block, and I had a teacher named Maureen McHugh, and she would say, writer's block is just the inability to let yourself write garbage. So you have to, set aside your ego and just write the garbage, and then you can fix it later. And that is sometimes the only way I get through my books.
I love the phrase. That is great. Okay. Are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you would recommend to other writers that may have helped you in your career?
Yes, I early in my career, I was a member of a number of local writers organizations, and I think those are important to join. Critique circles are important to join. Personally, because of my genre, the Historical Novel Society is a wonderful resource. I am a member, and I love their conferences that they hold. So that's a great place to meet other writers and pitch your ideas to agents sometimes too.
Okay, great. I have questions now about you as a person.
Oh, all right.
What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
I think I'm pretty transparent. Unlike Francis, I don't think I have secrets. Yeah. No.
Or no secret love affairs, or
There's no secret love affairs.
that, well, that was the other one.
Or if there were, I wouldn't tell you.
Right. Okay. What question do you wish interviewers would ask you? And what would your answer be?
Well, this is a tough question because you've asked such good questions. Um, I'm not sure. I think maybe um, this is really a tough one. I guess maybe what gets me up every morning to write, and it's this that I feel like everyone is born with some way that they can contribute, and I don't have a lot of other marketable skills, but I have this one, and I feel like I can contribute in this way to a better dialogue about um, the mission of our country as a democracy in the world, and how it's important that everyone takes part in it.
Hey, that's great. So what is or are your passions when you're not writing? And how do you make time for the things that you love?
I love cats, and so I've had many in my lifetime, and some were very special soul cats. And now, after I lost my really beloved 16-year-old cat Butterscotch, to whom I dedicated becoming Madam Secretary because he was my little assistant, I started fostering kittens, and so I fostered about 20 cats recently. and and I love them. I love shaping their little minds and making them good pets and helping them to be well adjusted in their little lives.
Well, that was one of my questions is that writers very often have furry or feathered or
Yeah.
otherwise non-human companions to help them through their work. And do you have any? And what do you have? And how do they help, or do they hinder you with your work? And what
Yeah.
about your fosters?
Butterscotch, when he was live, he was a wonderful help. He was a little foot warmer, and he also was a very routine driven cat. So, he would make sure that we went to bed at the hour we were supposed to go to bed at, and make sure that I would get my coffee and start my day. Foster kittens, however, are beautiful chaos. They are not helpful at all in the writing process. I'll be typing my manuscript and I've got kittens hanging off of my shoulders and playing around my feet, but they do bring such joy that sort of translates onto the page sometimes.
Right. Yes. Kittens, cats are wonderful. Uh, so what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have around you when you are writing or editing?
You see, this is my writing space. It is also sometimes the kitten foster room. So it is, at the moment, it is peaceful, but usually it's chaotic with kittens playing behind me. What do I need for my writing? Usually just a good lot of water. Um, I sometimes write to music, but it shouldn't have any lyrics because then I get caught up in the words. And my computer and my ergonomic mouse. I'm a low maintenance girl.
Okay. And you mentioned music. If you do listen to music, what type of music? You said no lyrics.
Yes, instrumentals mostly. I like to listen to the soundtracks from movies because often, there'll be a song in there that that will match the mood of whatever scene that I'm trying to write. And I try to write cinematically.
Okay. Do you have um any favorite foods that you like to
Yes,
eat
too
while you're
many. Uh, I'm Italian American, so I love food. But and so pasta, an easy favorite.
okay? Pasta, yes.
Hmm.
All right. Now I just have two more questions for
Okay.
you. One is, where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And I always have to give a little plug for Annie's. You can get Stephanie's books at Annie's if you call us at 508-796-5613, or you can email us at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. WORCESTER, not WISTA. Uh, and where else can people get your books?
My books are available more or less wherever books are sold, especially wonderful independent bookstores. You can go to my website and find links to them too. And I hope readers do come to my website because there's a lot of extra resources about my books and the heroines that I write about, as well as a link to my monthly newsletter, which is a historical book of the month club. And I give away free books and I talk about news and I review things. So, oh, and sometimes I give away deleted scenes. So you get extras when you subscribe.
Ah, interesting. And there, and isn't there one book that's
Oh, yes.
uh,
I also give a free book.
only,
Yes, you get a free book for subscribing. Thank you.
yes. Yep, that's right. Okay, well, thank you. It's been wonderful speaking to you. And hopefully we will see you in around the Boston area or Worcester area sometime in the future.
I would love that. I will revisit my old haunts.
Yes, that's right. You were in college around this area.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Thanks very much, Stephanie Dray. And
Thank you. What a delight.
okay, we will be speaking with you. Bye.